which just gives you kind of that spell damage redundancy, which can be honestly quite cool in some situations later in the game. It lets you cycle a lot with the Shadow Steps and with the Ethereal Aug Merchants and still find yourself in a position where you have spell damage at the very end of the game.
Yeah, and there was sort of control warriors have started to float around a bit, even the big warriors in particular, even if someone bought Pirate Warrior, even that can be annoying. So that extra 2 spell damage, just a nod to the fact that somebody might try to target your rogue and bring a control warrior, and you're like, haha! You just can do nothing about this guild trader because you can't kill me until turn 7,000, so unlucky. So that's a relevant tech as well.
Job done.
Mm-hmm.
And then they just get up to 600 armor, and you're like, oh, well, I can only do 72 or 75 or something to you. That's unlucky for me. But yeah, it's a cool tech.
Yeah, unlucky.
I must stop exaggerating. But,
yes, you must.
Alright, so it's a race to see who can press the purple button the most times until you have to stop pressing it, really. You want to get that quest on the line, you want to get your threats down. Your threats rely on having fewer cards in your deck. Your quest relies on having more taps, more damage taken. Everything is helped by just drawing a lot of cards early, and taps are the most efficient way to do that in a game where you're not going to get killed by doing it.
Yeah.
Standard stuff.
Standard stuff. And I feel like the button is more green than purple. It's more densely green, but that's a topic.
Only green when it's your turn. No, it's a topic for right now, because there's nothing happening apart from this massive 8/6 minion on turn 4.
No, even just the coloration within the icon, not the border, but there's just green breath coming from.
Actually, just
skeleton creature.
Just looks like Sottle in the hot takes picture. Actually.
Ah, yeah, you're right. That's what it was inspired by, actually.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, they just went, oh. That looks great. We'll make that into the hero tap button. Right, so the first Anethron of what will probably be many has been dealt with, and the war of attrition begins. Choices already here for Eddie to do with how to get more taps out, what to do with this coin.
Yep. Could go for turbo quest completion, but already pretty close anyway with the Unstable Shadow Blast. Very awkwardly expensive hand. You got all the payoff cards, but none of the ways to actually get there.
Because he doesn't want to coin into a Baron's Scavenger. Nice though that looks, it's very wasteful.
Yes.
He just made some space in his hand basically with that play and decided to hope the next 2 draws reward him better, but No Hands is racing along with the smooth version of how your hand should look.
Yep. And we're going to be looking at some pretty solid turns, turn after turn here for No Hands. This is not going to complete the quest, but it's going to fill up his hand, which is going to give him the Anethron back. Has to make the decision. I think Anethron's like always going to be one. Flesh Knight can get cheaper. If you play the Anethron, what else are you going to do with your mana? He could cycle a little bit further with like Tour Guide and then Mortal Coil it. But if he just plays Flesh Giant, the natural draw from his turn next turn would activate the Anethron again. But maybe he does want to cycle a little further.
Yeah, Flesh Giant would have been in the pool for the second raise death alongside the Anethron for later, which would be better later. So that was one thing he had to think about, but this just looks quite tasty.
Yep. Gets to get that Dream Soul out of the way, make the Flesh Giant cheaper. I'm not sure. That for that play, if he had just jammed a 4-mana Flesh Giant, I would have been okay with that line as well. Finally, Eddie gets one of these big threats that's playable. It's just going to match Anethron with Anethron, and does get that quest completion down. His own Flesh Giant hand getting cheaper, so now we're kind of at this parity. Both players are similar in life total. They both have Anethron on the board, but No Hands does seem like he's one turn ahead, right? He has the initiative. So I would say that's never so slight advantage in his favor.
Yeah, Eddie needs a backfire or something. Quite a few things he needs to make this a better looking hand. Because no hands. I can't think of a better word than smooth. It's probably my smooth brain that's making that happen. But
I mean,
his hand is just so smooth.
Yeah, this turn is pretty nutty. I think he can just cash in on a Mortal Coil here as well. I don't think there's any reason not to, because he assumes that his Tamsin's not going to live another turn, so he might as well basically discount this Mortal Coil for 0 and utilize the extra mana crystal that he wouldn't have otherwise utilized.
Has a lethal setup without playing the Flesh Giant, which is why he's considering everything here. Because he has the Battlegrounds Battle Master in hand.
Yeah, this is enough pressure on board, and the biggest thing you want to avoid in handlock mirrors is these swing turns, where your opponent is able to kill all of your threats and then develop their own, and it's not that difficult, right? Soul Rend plus a Drain Soul and a Mortal Coil, since Eddie has his coin in hand, and then they drop their own Flesh Giant, right? There's a ton of ways that can happen and be a possibility.
Yeah, he's going to be aware as well of the sort of hand Eddie's got, just by the fact that Eddie's done nothing useful for most of the game because of his hand, and realise that when this gets down to 10 cards left in Eddie's deck, which will happen pretty soon, because that's how the deck is built, he could be facing a lot of issues quite quickly, even though it looks good right now. Those issues are about to begin.
He's going Nethron, Null, Drain Soul.
Yep.
More bones to
Works.
Gets it all off.
Picks up the backfire, still got the coin. He is set for a good turn, either next turn or the turn after now.
Yeah, and there's
the whole hand.
Sort of the downside to playing Flesh Giant with just how Eddie's hand was. That would have been, pretty sure that would have been a guaranteed lethal in that scenario if he had played the Flesh Giant. But again, like trying to avoid those swing turns still has a ton of merit. So that's just being the results-oriented thinker that I am. Very advanced thinker.
It's quite clever, actually, because you look at what the result is, and then you say, hey, that might happen again, which is good thinking, because if it's happened once, then it can happen.
Just
so
logical.
I think that's a good way to be, TJ.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
What's the opposite of a results-orientated thinker?
What's the opposite of results?
Ambiguity? How can you have the opposite of results? No results. Like, unplayed.
The source.
Sure.
A source.
Don't understand that at all.
The opposite of a results-oriented thinker is a source-oriented thinker. There you go. Nailed it.
It sounds like they're on the source to me. How can Eddie not die next turn is actually not the easiest question to answer right now.
Yeah. Even a Soul Rend here won't get him down to enough cards to be able to play the Scavenger. I honestly think that this just might be guaranteed.
Just the perfect combination of minions, right? It's just the Neophyte and the Giant, that's it. But that's all he needs.
Yeah.
So many possibilities.
Yep, Eddie reaches the same conclusion we did. And now he's just got to hope, because he doesn't know for sure, although he's got a good idea from how the game's been played, that the Battle Master's there. He'll nod knowingly. There you go, nods knowingly. And 1-0 down.
Yep. Pretty textbook handlock mirror, honestly, where both players are just tapping and drawing cards, and then the player that usually gets that threat online first, or those threats online first, is the player that comes out on top. Again, no hands going back to the turn where he didn't extend with the Flesh Giant. Obviously, we can see that it was a good play, but from his perspective, he was trying to avoid the swing, and regardless, he was going to be trying to set up for a lethal the very next turn. Which was his game plan, especially with the Cold Neophyte. He wanted to drop that Flesh Giant and protect it with the Cold Neophyte, and then move from there. I think overall it was just a very solid game from No Hands, and Eddie had that all of the payoff cards in hand with not really much of the setup, and by the time he could get things rolling, No Hands was just too far ahead.
And if a deck said NoHandsGamer on it, which it does at the top of the screen, it would be Big Warrior. This is just a no-hands sort of deck. This particular one I don't think was his creation, but it just Big Warrior, chill for a bit, and then start messing around with nonsense big minions. I feel like No Hands is in his element with this sort of mess.
Yep. And obviously Big Warrior is a very cool deck. It does have some pretty big weaknesses, the biggest one being in the form of Quest Mage, but you can still get there. It's just a little bit difficult because if they're able to deal with your threats at all, you can't just rely on armoring out of range because they have infinite damage. But we'll see if we get to that point. Oh wait, no, is it? Hold on one second. Let me just make sure that I'm not crazy. I am crazy. It's been banned away, so that's a smart ban. Usually, when you build a conquest strategy, you build it with a ban in mind, as opposed to kind of the other way around. Where you build it trying to target specific decks and then you ban the one that you didn't have an answer for, whereas Conquest you kind of build it from build it ban up to try and make sure that all of your decks can win against something. So
unless you do the Monsanto, which in the kind way of looking at Monsanto's lineup is a target a deck. You pick a deck that isn't going to beat any of your decks, but that's always a risky strategy. Because when you say a deck can't beat any of your decks, you usually end up with 365 35s against that deck, and it finds a way, and then your lineup's garbage against the rest of their lineup, and things all fall apart. So it's always the argument with Conquest: do you do what you just said, pick the best decks, pretty much ban away something you don't like, or do you just go, oh, everyone's going to play Garrote Rogue, I'll just play things that beat it, and then the Rogue wins, and you feel sad.
Yep. It's a great breakdown. Great breakdown. Been players that have tried on the biggest of stages to go for the target strategy in Conquest. Frozen being probably the most notable to do that in the past at the last chance qualifier in 2016, 17?
It's one of those two. It's definitely one of those two.
It's got to be. It's got to be.
I want to say 17. I think maybe 16's a bit. I think somebody tried it the year before. I think Hot Meowth tried it the year before, and I think Frozen tried it the year after. So I'm going to say the Meowth did it in 16 and Frozen did it in 17.
Okay, that makes sense to me. But getting back to the game, Eddie's got a good start with some threats. This is less of the payoff cards and more of the setup cards for the hand locks. That's a good thing. Gets the Nethron online early. No Hands has a decent hand as well, right? When you don't have minions in your hand, that's generally a good thing. And the only minion that he has is the Cowardly Grunt, which is the one that you'd want. However, Cold Neophyte's played, can't coin it out. So we might be looking at just a Blade Storm, yeah. I mean, gets to draw a card in the process.
Have you looked for... I think I've looked. There are no European GMs in Eddie's deck, so no Viper. So the Bulwark will stick when it comes down.
Yeah, and that's a pretty big deal because outside of quest completion, the only real ways that you have to actually get that damage through is just pure minion attacks. So...
One thing, obviously, it can do in general, the Warlock, it does have tour guides and things to be irritating regarding chipping away at that bulwark, but even so, it's going to be very irritating for Eddie to get through that.
Yep.
So NoHand's looking to get time now to get a Cowardly Grunt on the board, and you've always got to play around that Battlemaster, which we can see Eddie has. They always have it. I don't know why I say that every time. I always say, oh, just in case he's got it. Well, they always have it. It's been in everybody's hand throughout the entirety of GM.
Yep. Could go for just the provoke here because the Anethron was played first. It will attack in. Oh no, wait, what? Is it in order? Okay. I was just completely incorrect there. It's my fault.
Okay.
Wait, what? There's some... so Devouring Swarm is the order in which they were played because it's on your side.
Okay.
Provoke is the order on the board. I think I get those mixed up.
From left to right, or what do you mean by order on the board?
Yeah, from left to right. Right? Is that correct?
I honestly don't know.
I'm entirely sure I made a. This was back when Bly's made his weird. I'm playing out rank 1 legend with Big Warrior. I went 7-3. I watched it. And I made a note of how provoke happened because I knew that it was different from some of the other things that were similar. But sorry, I can't find it. Someone will correct me.
All you've got to do is find your notes from 5 weeks ago. If you're anything like me, that's an impossible task. Alright, but we will be corrected. Thank you for that in advance. We appreciate it. And we like to test the community. NoHands with an odd-shaped board. This is where you start thinking, dare I brawl? 2 out of 3 of the outcomes are so good. I'm waiting and waiting. Eyeballing the commencement.
Sorry, I'm going crazy right now.
That's fine. We'll let you.
Yeah. Okay. Whatever. It's gone now.
No, not happened. Okay, cool. All right. So he does go for commencement. Hits the Troublemaker, which was the last minion left in his deck, alongside the other Troublemaker. So he had a good idea what he was going to get. Is what I'm getting at there.
Yep. All right. What can Eddie do?
Get down to 10 cards in his deck, can he?
I mean, yes, but
no.
Is it? Is that the correct play? Is kind of the biggest question.
Thing is, if you lose the tempo, if you lose the fact that you're always in front at the start of your turn, or the end of your turn anyway, against this warrior deck, you just lose the game, because then they just overrun you entirely. So he's got to keep a handle on that.
Yeah, I was correct with my analysis that it was order of play. Solos pointed out that the Flesh Knight was in play first because the Nethron was brought back. It was killed. That wasn't the original Nethron. So I was correct in the sense that Anethron was in play first. But it wasn't that Anethron. Boom.
Cool.
We're all winners.
Why make notes when Sottle's in chat?
What now?
Don't answer that. None of the answers are polite. It's not a fair question. Don't do it. Don't take the fishy. Take the rabbit and then play the bulwark and then wait a turn.
Yeah, I mean, but rabbit doesn't let you do
anything.
anything else in the turn. Yeah, like you theoretically have ways to kill the board. Okay.
Yep.
But I think the biggest thing is here he doesn't have armor, so like shield slams are kind of dead removal. So there might not be a world where he can like brawl, and the other two are just almost completely useless in most scenarios. So I am fine with this.
The grunt is actually useless as well because he burned his... Well, I mean, it's a 6-2, but he burned his other troublemaker. So he has got to find a way to get some armor and sneak a Rattlegore down.
Yeah.
I think this is just going to be difficult, honestly, but there must be so much removal left in NoHand's deck.
Yeah.
Heavy plate would be handy because then he can start shield slamming stuff.
Yeah. I mean, there's only 12 cards left, which means that we can take a look.
You're not going to be there for long. You got to be quick.
Oh, sword and board. Yep. Heavy plates, a blade storm.
Rabbit's not much use in this situation.
Yeah, it does have a guaranteed clear regardless. Whatever survives, he could either minefield it if it's just the Battlemaster or minefield sword and board. If it is the scavenger, like it is in this instance.
Weirdly, this might be better for him because he actually wants to use the sword and board.
Yeah.
Try and tick these shield slammers up a little bit. Almost untangled everything, but it's taken him a lot of resources to do so. And Eddie is still just resource heavy.
Ooh, I was just about to say the one thing that he can take away from this situation is that Battlemaster is gone. It's not gone. It's back. So now has to worry about the potential of that. I wonder if Eddie does have a read that this could be Dark Moon Rabbit.
I think he did. Well, I was going to say I think he did. Because he put the Battlemaster in between his two minions. Yeah, that's a great read, Neil. Not because he wanted to give them both Wind Fury, which is the real reason he put it in the middle. He could have that read, though, because why isn't it being played?
Many possibilities. More bones to
I think he's on 9 health. Eddie will play around a lot of things naturally because he won't want his board getting cleared too badly.
Yeah.
You get accustomed to the smell.
Yep. Nails it.
Yep. Nice little positioning.
Heavy plate's finally drawn, but he can't heavy plate and double shield slam this turn because of the double neophyte, so he does have to use up his brawl, which is fine.
Yep.
Who's been in trouble, but gets there. And now the game is on.
Still needs to find a turn to stick Rattlegore, though, which is like, there's still a Flesh Giant in Eddie's deck, which he is guaranteed to draw this turn. Yep, because at the very least he had a Tour Guide left in his deck, so he could hit the Tour Guide, Mortal Coil it, tap, do whatever. Also, this finished his quest.
Yeah, that's one of the problems with the warrior deck. If you don't play many minions, then you burn one as well. Like, the grunt becomes useless, the Rattlegore, you can't really play it. If you draw your minions, it becomes hard work. And the rabbit, again, we talked about it, but he can't even play the heavy plate on the same turn to try and get a shield slam Rattlegore set up.
No.
Now Eddie's actually into trying to kill you two different ways.
Yep. And that should do it. Just the Tour Guide plus the unstable Shadow Blast is enough. And No Hands just was like a kind of the opposite of what happened in game one. In this one, he was kind of a step behind, where it seemed like he did have the tools, but every time he wanted to get a threat online, Eddie already had a threat in play that he had to acknowledge. And just became awkward. He wasn't able to get like clean removal early. Instead, went with like Outrider's Axe and kept having to take damage. Red had to face tank a Flesh Giant early on, which meant that every single threat on the board represented so much extra damage, and the Bulwark just really didn't buy enough time. I mean, obviously it prevented him from dying, but it didn't buy enough time for him to get a threat on board and kill the other side of the board, which is usually what you want out of the Bulwark in those kinds of situations. So Eddie ties with Series 1-1. Big Warrior's still in play for No Hands, so very likely we'll get to see that again. And Eddie has Weapon Rogue and what is
Anaconda Druid?
Anaconda Druid.
Chilling.
Yep.
Is that Weapon Rogue? So, yoink! I see my wonderful partner has put us a card to talk about. Talk about the yoink, TJ. You obviously want to. That's why it's there.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting, right? I mean, this deck wants to do one thing, and that one
It's
thing...
disgusting.
And it's disgusting. I mean, it is. They want to get
Exactly,
a weapon and just buff it up so much that they can deal too much damage in a single turn. Yoink can sometimes help you find it. Like, you can get life tap. It can also be efficient damage later on. If you get steady shot, you can also get the Druid hero power to squeeze in some extra damage or fight a little bit more for board early. Yoink has let me down in a lot of different situations, so I haven't been particularly playing with it in the, I'll be honest, actually very few games of Weapon Rogue that I've played since the nerfs, because everybody was playing it on the first couple days last week. Was it last week? Yeah. Like, not this week, but earlier in the week, but last week. And so I just didn't want to go with the flow. I tend to enjoy playing it when nobody else is playing it. Yeah, I'm that kind of person.
You played a lot of it at the either the start of this meta or the end of the last meta. I remember you playing
into the last meta, I think it was
4 or something legend. Yeah. So Yoink versus the second self-sharpening sword, which is the hardest thing I've ever had to say. It seems interesting to me. I just thought that the self-sharpening sword would be more useful, but I think you often make the point that actually you don't really want that weapon. It's just there's a backup plan.
Occasionally, yeah.
So, are you happy with the Yoink instead of it? So you've got two different backup plans, so they're not like redundant if you draw both swords.
Yeah. I was playing around for a long time with one self-sharpening sword and what to put in. Back then, Coerce was just so good that I wanted to play 2 of them. Nowadays, Coerce isn't as good because you don't. Back then, it was like all these Libra Paladins that you just really wanted to get those Libra from side of the way. And while the Libra Paladin still does exist in the current metagame, it's not nearly as prevalent. So I think like one Coerce is fine. All the other decks kind of go wide and it doesn't really make a difference.
Yeah, Coerce is fun though. You just launch it into their face. Just sorry,
what?
Sorry,
what are you launching a Coerce into their face?
Yeah, I'll destroy your face. No, but Coerce is good because of the way it just clears things out, right? But like you say, there's only Libram Paladin. What else is there that it can actually deal with? If you're dealing with giants, you're probably in trouble already, or you've won already. I still want a Coerce face.
Yeah, gotcha. Glad we could clear that up.
Eddie, in time-honoured tradition, actually draws the weapon for turn 3.
Yep. Decent opening for No Hands as well outside the Il'gynoth. Just having, again, the front-loaded draw with Tusk Piercer or Sigil. And then plenty of draw outside of that with the double jumps. That could then hit even more draw.
Yeah, it seems like players have decided that for Conquest at least, that OTK Demon Hunter is the way forward across all the regions. We've seen, Casey's sort of hybrid list. We've seen 1 or 2 people still playing brutes, but in general, I think this has been a pretty standard bring across all 3 regions this week.
Yeah.
Which is interesting to me, because for ladder, I think that Fell Demon Hunter, unless you're in the top sort of 100, I think Fell Demon Hunter is just better because it's more versatile. But in Conquest, yeah, you want to do your jobs efficiently with all your decks.
Yeah.
One of the interesting things to watch here is how No Hands paces any healing and how he generates healing, because obviously it's largely going to be killing his own minions if he needs to heal. The glides feel good, but I don't know. The rogue draws so many cards, they recover from the glides so quickly. And all the cards kind of do the same thing in the rogue deck, so they don't really get that punished by getting glid.
Yeah, though sometimes they could be like setting up damage or something like that. But usually at this stage in the game, it's not that good. It could change the way Eddie plays, though, which is interesting to think about / talk about. But he might just find more value in dumping as many cards as possible to play around the glide, and I think this is the case in this instance. Not that his play would have really changed much. He could have gone for like a secret passage, but I don't think his hand was really saying for that to happen.
But you make a valid point. You often see Rogue collect cards and go for one monstrous turn. We already see Eddie kind of pacing it out a little bit.
Yeah.
Going to be awkward because you don't want to wicked stab face in case your opponent just heals up from it, etc. NoHands very nearly played that then. Had to give it a bit of a nudge to the right to get into the trade folder.
Yeah. Instead of pointing at his mouse like we've seen some players do that have had mouse troubles, he just points to his face. Which, I mean, he has admittedly had problems with the eye tracker in the past, so it's not the craziest thing to have happen.
Again, Eddie in a position where he can swindle and still only have 4 cards.
Another happy guildie.
The extortion is the cards you can point at face and have fun with.
There you go. Found it. Well, this is a pretty easy choice, I'd say.
You want some life taps? Get some more cards.
Like you actually,
Warlock.
You don't even want minions.
Yeah, it's just a massive downside to actually help the Demon Hunter heal. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. NoHands has 3 things going on here. Obviously, he's going to have to glide at some point because the Il'gynoth, or survive a very long, unimaginable time. Because the Il'gynoth's 6 mana. He wants to complete the quest because the Il'gynoth's 6 mana. And he wants to heal up, and that takes a lot of mana. So he needs to accurately gauge how many turns he has available and what he's going to do with all of them. Kind of in order. His hand tells him what the next 3 or 4 turns want to be here.
Yeah, and he can only do one of those things at a time, most likely, right? Complete quest, heal, or play Kurtrus. Like, you pick one.
Yep. And do it 3 turns in a row, and if you pick the right one 3 times in a row, you probably win the game.
Yeah.
Demons.
But it's difficult.
Demons.
Yeah.
So, yep, first chunk of healing. And every time you do this, you stay alive longer, which makes winning the game easier. But you get rid of parts of your combo, which makes winning the game harder. It's such a difficult line to tread. Just doing a Viper check. No Viper.
Another one? I thought we already did Viper checks.
I did a Viper check in the first game, yeah? I do Viper checks sometimes.
Okay. This is probably double Silverleaf Poison. I was going to say even a Garrote here, I wouldn't mind. But I guess he wants to wait towards the end of his deck, just in case NoHands heals up. Going to dump Wicked Stab instead. The Garrotes actually end up being usually more damage, as weird as that sounds, later on the game, unless it's turn 10, because the the further you are in your deck, Garrote is an instant 2 plus usually at least 1 more bleed, which is at least 4. So I like just the dump of the Wicked Stab there. It also has less value from Guild Trader once you get to that point because
there's that one Guild
of
Trader.
Spell damage. It's multiple instances of spell damage, so you get more value from it overall.
Yeah, we've seen the deck actually able to set up OTKs because of all of the burn plus the Guild Trader plus the Groats in some situations. It's not the primary objective, but it's a very strong second chance. Right, No Hands untangles part 2 of the things he's trying to achieve. He's got the Kurtrus.
Yep, but again, this is at the very, very least 5 damage this turn, and it's likely much more than that. And then
and it's not just a bit more, right? It's not just a tickle, TJ. It is a lot of damage if he wants it.
Yeah, so there's just no way he can play Kurtrus. Like, you pretty much just have to dodge the weapon in a lot of situations to have a chance. We'll see, though.
So Groat now is a bit of...
Bottom of the deck.
Yeah, it's glide protection.
I mean, this is possible lethal here.
Yeah.
In fact, it needs 2 bleeds. With this draws 2, and then a life tap will draw another one. There's one. Needs 1 more. Life tap. Draws enough mana for double Sinister Strike. Alright, doesn't find it this turn. But now No Hands just has to heal up, I guess.
With a Guild Trader, an Il'gynoth, 2 Acrobatics, and a Kurtrus. Oh, I-beam. Well, that's a start.
Okay.
Oh. It's the whole, you can only do one of those things at a time thing again.
And even the heal here, he has to heal for a ton. There's 11 cards left. 5 of those 11 cards are bleeds. He knows that there's 2 Sinister Strikes left and a 7 damage weapon.
That draws cards, yeah.
That draws 2 more cards, so there's at least 3 draws coming out next turn. That doesn't even account for the fact that Eddie still has a cutting class left and the ability for trades.
I grow impatient.
Well...
Not trades on the board, I mean, like, you know.
No, I'm looking at what you go for here. So I think what he would like to go for is play Kurtrus, play Spectral Sight, and then get the 2 cards that stop him from dying.
I see.
Of course, you know, there's definitely 2 cards that stop him from dying right here.
Not one, and he's dead.
I yield.
He yields for now. It goes to 2-1 to Eddie, right? So,
Yep.
wow. Rogue always looks good when we see it, and we hardly ever see it. Is it just because Garrote Rogue is so good that, like, if you could bring 2 Rogue decks, your 4 decks could be any 4 decks, and they weren't allowed, for somehow there'd be a rule that said they can't be the same deck with 1 card's changed.
Well,
Just
I
a
mean,
good deck, right?
Weapon Rogue looks unbeatable in the games where it wins, and it looks like it could never win games of Hearthstone at all in the games that it loses.
It's the American way, TJ. We go whatever we see, that's what we go with. But no, you're right. It's very hard to judge how good it is for that reason.
Yeah. So I think that if you don't draw a weapon, or if your opponent has like a Rust-Rot Viper and you just get blown out of the game, like, it's just so polarizing in some senses. But Eddie's final remaining deck. Oh, go ahead.
It also seems to be that what happens is everybody brings Vipers one week, so everybody stops bringing the weapon classes or the weapon techs, like Poison Rogue, and then the Vipers sort of vanish, and someone goes, "Oh, the Vipers have gone. Let's bring back the Poison Rogue." That's not just in this meta. That's in like every meta always. Whether it was Harrison Jones, whatever it was, whether it was Ooze, every meta ever has sort of had this weird cyclic motion going on. But you're going to tell me about Anaconda Druid, and that's probably much more interesting than me waffling on about cyclic metas.
Yeah, I was just going to say that his last deck is Anaconda Druid. That was it. Wasn't necessarily going to talk about it, but I guess we have to now because you volunteered me for it. Oh, there we go. That's what I wanted to talk about.
I'm supposed to volunteer you things to talk about. That's what I have to do.
Job's done.
And then you volunteer me things to talk about, and then we just talk about beans in the desert, and it all goes to pieces.
and then it's just downhill from there. Yep. All right. So Eddie does have a Malagos in this Anaconda Druid, which is interesting, right? Usually you don't want to add too many minions to it. He's opted to include that instead of the Claw Machine. So Claw Machine is there to guarantee or have another way to get Anaconda. Mm-hmm. Whereas Malagos is the opposite, right? It's a way to guarantee that you have spells to accompany your Lady Anaconda. So I think they're very similar in a lot of ways. It just depends on what you put more stock into. The ability to like have one other card in your hand post alignment that draws you cards, or the ability to more likely have Anaconda.
Very curious to see how Eddie goes about this. Obviously, the glowfly swarms against any sort of half control-y warrior deck are always a dangerous shout. But if the warrior doesn't have the right removal at the right time, they can just win you the game on the spot. So I'm just curious to see how he goes about getting all that together.
Yep.
Especially now, because his hand tells him he just wants to pass and do nothing here. But that's not a good spot to be in.
What does his heart tell him?
Cards.
Wow.
Just miss out half the phrase. It's just much easier that way.
That hit me deep.
I'm a deep thinker, TJ.
I mean, overall, this is just a good matchup for pretty much any slow-styled warrior. It's kind of an all-in deck that only really has a few waves of threats, which is right in Warrior's wheelhouse.
Yeah. He doesn't want to do this. He knows that, like you say, the warrior should have ways to deal with it. As it happens, he really doesn't, and is dead to Arbor up right now as things stand. Because you have to waste lots of removal just taking down a couple of pesky glowflies. And then needs a bit of luck. He's likely to not split this exactly equally. Oh my goodness!
Oh yeah?
Eddie can't believe it. Look at this damage!
That is brutal. I mean, he doesn't really have any follow-up to it, so if No Hands were to just pick up a second minefield, that'd be quite good.
He's got Brawl as well, yeah.
He primed them. They're ready.
Yeah. Minefield number 2. Just can't miss.
Yep.
First one was just the prototype. Is there any reason not to Arbor up here? Okay, so you spend your coin. Oh, he can't because he's overloaded.
Well, I was like, what? Yeah. The biggest reason is the fact that it's just impossible.
What to do?
Actually, that's the only reason. If I could Arbor up here, I absolutely would.
Yeah. So what he's actually thinking about is whether to fungal, but then...
He's got a full hand.
Time waits for no
Yeah,
one.
and it takes away the speed on his alignment to some degree if he wants to go that route.
Unless he's confident that he's unlucky, then Fungal Fortunes doesn't fill up his hand if he discards Anaconda.
Yeah, that's fair. He seems okay with this outcome because he hit the overgrowth, which is what the whole equation was at the end of the day.
Yep.
I still think he should have arbored up.
Me too, Neil. Me too.
Whoa.
All right. Okay, was that a nature studies burned? A lot of damage coming here, though. This is
It is.
not looking good for No Hands at the moment.
Excuse me, just trying to find anything that isn't Brawl, but there's nothing there.
Nope. I mean, he could trade and look for the other brawl. Trade them.
I'm so used to casting like Warlock and Rogue, like Garrot Rogue and stuff. I'm always looking for what's the 5 different things they can do this turn? Not he's got to brawl, hasn't he? Like, what else can he do? Oh, I can play a cowardly grunt and die.
That doesn't seem particularly appealing.
What is this?
Nope. Name's going to be left on board. Eddie doesn't really have a way to capitalize on this, but does have a second Glowfly Swarm. No Hands needs something off the top. Nope, he's dead. Oh, he's not dead.
Oh my goodness!
He could still be dead. He needs one of the small Glowfly Swarms to survive, which he is. Okay, so he's alive at 1. What is in the deck that can kill him from Guess the Weight? Second Arbor up. And nothing else.
At the moment, he's dead.
Nature studies.
He's dead to alignment hit you. The Troublemaker, I guess, would get him out most of the time, to be fair.
Or like a Heavy Plate off the top, or a Bulwark off the top, or a Rancor off the top, or a Blade Storm off the top. Oh yeah, Troublemaker.
Sometimes.
Well, sometimes.
Got it.
Yep.
Wins the 75%er. That's just the start of the problems. Because now Eddie's going to do the thing. Where he gets 1,000,000 mana, a load of armor, and some lovely 8 drops.
Well, he went for Solar Ramp. So he's going to go... It looks like he's emptying his hand in preparation for Malagos.
Alright.
I will give your flesh
If he empties enough of his hand, he guarantees to draw Anaconda and then he can play all the things, but what does that achieve? Yeah, this is fine, obviously.
Alright.
Trying to find a Blade Storm. Can't find one.
He can kill off his Grunt and get a Morg Forge Fiend from his deck. There's only 2 minions left in the deck. It's 1 Troublemaker, 1 Forge Fiend. So if he goes like hit, Grunt, Blade Storm, and then hits Forge Fiend, he's alive.
Sure. That's what he's going to have to do. I think anything else makes sense.
Go get on some on your own side. You're in my school now.
Didn't hit it.
Nope.
No. He needed none of them to go face to clear.
Yep. He needed every... Oh, no, he almost got it too. It was just 1. Pretty rough game for No Hands, honestly. He did, obviously, you know, he had a ton of outs along the way. The start was just the very first minefield going horribly wrong, which then snowballed and let Eddie deal that much damage, right? Because all those Glowfly Swarms then got Arbor up. Like, any less one would have been 4 less damage, would have left him alive as the cascading effect happened towards the end of the game. So, just overall rough game, rough series for No Hands. As Eddie does take the win, 3-1, which does mean he is alive, technically, in terms of relegation. He came into this week at dead last, has now secured himself at least 7 points, which ties him with...
dead last.
Which is still dead last, but it's tied for dead last. Problem for Eddie is his tiebreakers are atrocious. His highest finish is a quarterfinals appearance, whereas the players that you're looking at are around him, Killing All Day has a semifinals, Egg Waffle has a finals, Rami has a finals, Luna has a finals. Frozen has a win. He pretty much needs to win and hope that a bunch of other players lose, because Rami also moved on, which means that he got 1 point further out of range. But a miracle run is possible for Eddie. His highest finish would be 10 points, because he came into the week at 5.
Yep.
That's if he wins, which would tie him with Frozen, which if the two of the other players that are competing could end at 9, then he could pass them and avoid relegation. So we'll see. Still a lot of series left to be played for Eddie until we get to that point, but this was the first step along the way, and an important step it was for him.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's Luna. Another result. Luna's going to have to watch all of this. She probably won't, but Luna will watch all of these, or be told the results of all of these, hoping that the people in the relegation zone are losing, and that's the first match since she played, and Eddie won. It's just one of the many, many matches that Luna's going to have to sweat to see if she survives or not. But for now, Eddie still got a lot to do, not much of a threat. If he wins again in the quarterfinals, people start paying a bit more attention. But next up, we're going to have another player. As you see Ego Waffle there, I'll say it while he's on the screen where you can see visually what's going on. It's going to be Ego Waffle versus Nalgadan. You can see that Nalgadan's in that big dogfight to try and get the top 2 by. But Ego Waffle, you can see very clearly there, if he loses, will not be able to escape that relegation zone.
Yep. Big deal for him. And a quick mention to NoHandsGamer, he'll end his season at 13 points.